This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
If you could just excuse me for just a moment. Mike, if you ever say that again, there's going to be trouble here. This is Wretched Radio. Go ahead. Curse everybody the way that you cursed me during the break.
Oh,
Mike.
I just thought God's love was more like a sloppy wet kiss.
Yes. He loves us. Oh, how he loves. Isn't that the sloppy wet kiss song right there?
That is. That was a good version of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Don't mock me, former worship leader. You've sung Oceans before, haven't you? I know it. Oh, you're not going to turn off your microphone now, Pally.
Unfortunately, I have sang Oceans before. Quite a few times, actually.
Of course you sing Oceans quite a few times. That's what you do with that song.
You put it on repeat.
You sing it over and over. I have never even heard the full version of the Ocean song. I've read the lyrics, and wow. It's not as deep as the ocean. Let's just say that. Would like to ask you a question. Are your relationships in your church like a sloppy wet kiss? No, that's not what I wanted to say at all. Now look what you've done. Are your relationships in your church getting better or worser? Are they improving or devolving? Is it possible, if it's not your church, that it is the greater evangelical community with whom you are having issues these days? There is a subject that we were warned about a number of years ago, and that subject was social justice issues. That there was a movement inside of the church, not just outside of the church, but inside of the church, that was making inroads, really deep inroads. And the result of it would be division. And that, of course, is because that is what social justice, as we understand it today in common parlance, that's what it's designed to do. It's not designed to unite. It's designed to divide. Question: have you noticed that there's new divisions and new groups forming in evangelical Christianity? Have you noticed that? Have you perhaps been a little bit perplexed at the associations that are forming right in front of us? And are you maybe even wondering, hey, where do I fit in this clam bake? That guy's hanging out with that guy now? Wait a second. Those people who used to do stuff with those people aren't doing things with those people anymore? Who's united and aligned with whom? Was reading an article, because I don't know who the author was. Kevin DeYoung wrote an article about the issue of the division that is being caused because of social justice. And he wrote this, and it resonated with me because I've been scratching my head. It might be because I need head and shoulders, or it's because things are indeed getting confusing out there. He wrote, I fear that in the months and years ahead, we will see Christians and churches and gospel movements reshuffling their associations based upon a unity, not shared Christological and soteriological truths, but in the sameness of our political and cultural instincts. Have you noticed that's already happening? Have you noticed that cliques are forming that here to date never existed? Are you wondering who's getting along with whom now? Now, there is a potential for a good outcome in all of this, in that we will start to recognize maybe, just maybe, our associations should not be built on this particular issue, but nevertheless, until that day, we are seeing not unity, but division and a reshuffling of the evangelical deck. Here's another issue that is causing a reshuffling in my estimation. COVID. Have you noticed that people are now hanging out, reposting one another's articles based on that person's position about COVID, whether it's wearing masks, whether it's about vaccines, whether it's about whether or not church should be opened or not, social distancing? New partnerships are forming. Have you noticed that? I certainly have. All right, reckless love guy.
Yes.
Am I making things up, or have you noticed that too in your observations of the evangelical community?
I notice it now, especially with COVID, the mask wearers versus the non-mask wearers.
Yeah, wait until the vaccine thing.
That's definitely
just gonna
coming.
Be a real laugh riot, that one. There are divisions that are being caused from masks. Now, I really do think, if we could just pull the lens back a little bit, and let's fast forward. It's now, the year is 3020. The Lord has tarried, and let's hope that 3020 is a lot better than 2020, although not sure that it will be. Nevertheless, if we look back on the church 100 years from now and saw that Christians were fighting over masks. Now, I know, believe me, I know you've got a deep-seated feeling about the subject. So do I. Believe me, I do. We're fighting, calling each other names over that. I wonder if the church in a century will wonder, what was their problem? And I think their problem is that we're forgetting about levels of unity and truth. Mask wearing, the last time I checked, it is not an essential doctrine. It is, needless to say, somewhere along the lines of not even secondary. Samuel Say, a writer from Tim Challies' church, perhaps offering us some help, how to talk about racism with friends, kind of offering what is a Greg Kokel emphasis. Don't talk as much as you ask questions. Question asking can be an effective way to bring about a more harmonious and productive conversation. He wrote this: if we begin conversations with our friends by asking questions, we'll inevitably end the conversations by answering their questions. Wise people are quick to listen and slow to speak, quick to ask questions and slow to give answers. Wise guys speak last. Here are some questions that you could ask somebody if you're wrangling over racial issues, social justice issues in the church. From Samuel Say, the biblical definition of racism is partiality. Do you agree with that? Partiality. I like this group better than that group because of an external. Do we have the same understanding on the definition of racism, or does it mean something else? We should figure that out before we start slinging the word racism around. That's really important because not everybody agrees on what the definition of racism is. 2, the Bible says we shouldn't show partiality or favoritism to anyone, including black people or white people, black people or police officers. Do you agree with that? Now, instead of fighting over virtually everything, maybe you're going to come to some biblical agreement by asking questions. Do you think it's sinful for white people to assume the worst of black people? Conversely, do you think it's sinful for black people to assume the worst of white people? Now we're getting some things defined, aren't we? Samuel Say, question 5, since racism is partiality, systemic racism is systemic partiality. So what laws or policies in our nation's system today show partiality against black people? That's a good question, isn't it? Because the assumption is there is systemic racism, all right? Well, we've decided racism is partiality. So please point to those laws that promote partiality, and I think everybody will be happy with one voice to say, that ain't right. Right? Do you agree disparities are not independently evidence of systemic oppression? Do you agree disparities are not independently evidence of systemic of systemic oppression? In other words, an anecdote does not make a case. Number 7, if racial disparities are evidence for systemic racism, and since racial disparities exist in every nation, do you believe every nation is systemically racist? Ooh, clever. If racial disparities are evidence of racism, then would you agree that any nation or system that doesn't seek to eliminate racial disparities is systemically racist? If any system that doesn't seek to eliminate racial disparities is systemically racist, wouldn't that make the Mosaic Law systemically racist? because it doesn't seek to address that issue, does it? If racial parity or equality of outcome is evidence of a racially just system, what policies or law need to be implemented to establish that? All right. You're probably not going to remember those. I read them last night, and I forgot them today. The point is, instead of just blopping in on the conversation with somebody in another pew, you'll have to Google that because we used to have those in churches. Ask questions. Make sure you're talking about the same stuff, because chances are pretty fair, while you might not come to complete agreement, you might find that you actually have more than you thought you did, and maybe, just maybe, all of the division, which God is not fond of, and all of the cliques that we are currently forming, all the lines that we are redrawing, might be drawn properly around social justice? No, around biblical truth. This is Wretched Radio.
Hello, Maria. This is Todd Friel from your auto insurance company, noticing you're not taking advantage of any of our life insurance policies. Really? Oh, really? You're not afraid to die? That's funny. Listen to this clip from Paul Washer.
I'm talking about you.
So what do you think of that, Maria? Maria?